Right to life, right to liberty.
It is Tuesday, it is 1 p.m. That means we are on Let's Talk Justice. I am Jade Williams, Policy and Advocacy Specialist at Jamaicans for Justice.
And I am Michael Jackson, Executive Director of JFJ. Thank you so much, Jade, for holding the fort while I do this remotely. I appreciate you always. And thanks to our listeners for joining us each week. Again, we appreciate your listenership and your support to the work of Jamaicans for Justice.
Awesome. So, Michael is out of studio. Before we get into our major topics for today, though, and before Michael does her recap, just want to give a shout out to a member of the team, integral member or producer Vanessa Parkinson is celebrating her birthday today. So we celebrate with you, Vanessa. We hope it's a great day, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon. And I'll hand over to Michael for her to do our recap of this week.
And like a typical echo chamber, I echo that call, Jade, and sentiment to Vanessa, quite a valid member of the JFJ team. Last week, Jade, again, you held the fort down, and we had Mercy Fraser, the mother of Mario Dean, with us. And because of her continued advocacy and her relentless nature in pursuing justice for her son, Mario Dean, we have been in the news talking about the importance of fast-tracking justice in the country. Yes. JFJ made a call to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, for those who followed up on the topic, that we've seen more than 10 delays in the Mario Dean trial for various reasons of maladministration, we would call them. The last reason that saw her matter, or the matter being postponed until February 2024, was lack of enough jurors for the matter to go forward. And it's a topic we're going to be discussing today. But JFJ made the call for the matter to be heard in the home circuit, which is in Kingston, for different reasons. As you can appreciate, in the rural areas, you have less persons who are able to come forward to serve for jury duty for different reasons, such as the informal economy and so on. We're going to be touching on that. Now, though JFJ made the call, I take note that the Director of Public Prosecution was on Dion Jackson's Miller's program Beyond the Headlines yesterday evening, saying that the office would not be responding favorably to that call based on a number of reasons. For example, the cost to the state to ensure that witnesses are brought forward to Kingston, the cost apparently to the prosecutors. And the question I ask the DPP and others who would proffer such an argument, that though JFJ would not be discounting the cost to the state, my question is, when it is the state that is the abuser, the named offender in something such as law enforcement officers acting unlawfully, at what point in the name of justice, at what point to suggest that impunity would not be acknowledged and sanctioned by the state? At what point do we say state accountability requires that cost, whatever the cost may be, is incurred by the state? With the greatest of respect to the Madam DPP, I don't think that is sufficient reason to say that this is not something that will be put forward by the office. And we're going to be writing and following up with the office to ensure that our counter arguments are heard in a favorable light, because I think in the pursuit of justice, there are some costs, such as social justice costs, that outweigh the economic cost or the inconvenience for a trial to be expedited and wrapped up in a short time. It can't be that close to 10 years, notwithstanding that 2-year period of COVID, that we're seeing that justice continue to elude the family of Mario Dean. I think much more is desired and much more is expected from the state. So I just wanted to open with that conversation, Jade, and then over to you.
Thank you so much, Michael. And, I appreciate you bringing back that context again for our listeners, because I feel, listening to the DPP yesterday on Beyond the Headlines, of course, there are some valid issues that would have caused delays, but a lot of them that we would have seen and our team would have observed personally had to do with things that could be mitigated by additional action from the state. So we look forward to seeing a more positive response to our follow-up that will be forthcoming. So we'll go.
Just before you continue, I think just for fairness to the DPP, she did acknowledge and did commit to seeing what is within her power
Yes.
to expedite the process next year. But certainly for Mario Dean's mother, Miss Fraser, she would
Yes.
want the matter to be transferred to Kingston.
Absolutely. All right, thank you for that, Miss Jackson. So we'll go straight now into our right of the day and our trivia, and we'll start with our right of the day, which is more of a did you know today, and it is focused on our Jury Act, and it states at Section 44 that where it is that you are on trial for a capital murder or a treason offense, that if you are to be convicted, that means you are to be found guilty or you are to be acquitted, you are to be found not guilty, the jury must return a unanimous verdict. So that means every member of that jury must have the same response as to your guilt or innocence for you to be proven guilty or innocent in those cases. And
And non-capital is what, 9 members, Jade?
I can't say, Mikhail, because that is one of our trivia questions. Our trivia
Oh, it
question
is.
today
Oh,
is
I'm sorry.
in the case of murder or treason, how many persons are required to be a part of the jury? So if you'd like to respond to that, you can respond via WhatsApp at 2397583 or on our Instagram at Jamaicans for Justice. I wonder if you were asking about how many persons had to agree to the verdict in that
Yes,
instance.
not your trivia question. I thought I had a slip just now.
Oh, okay. Yes. Well, it is not unanimous, but I'm sure our guests
9, I think. Yeah.
have will have some expertise in that. So our topic for today overall is civic participation, and we're trying to understand and break down those jury obligations and challenges within Jamaica. And so we know that the jury plays a crucial role in our legal system by enlisting randomly selected citizens to impartially assess the evidence and deliver fair verdicts in trials. And this is a process that promotes transparency and community involvement and has been shown to increase trust in the legal system and is essential for the upholding of justice. Now, in Jamaica, we have our Jury Duty Act, which stipulates who qualifies to serve, and any Jamaican living in the country between the ages of 18 and 69 who has a taxpayer registration number, so a TRN number, or is registered to vote can be selected for jury duty. Now, unfortunately, there has been some issues with the implementation of these obligations. So we would have seen persons ignoring their summons to serve or finding reasons to be exempted from that obligation. And there are several factors that have affected why persons are unwilling to participate in jury duty, including not being able to afford the attending of the trial or receiving insufficient financial support in order to participate in the trial, issues with their employment, as well as, in some cases, fear of retaliation from those or those related to the person who is on trial. And we would have seen from the CAD that there has been issues of low juror turnout, in particular in the parishes of St. James, Clarendon, St. Catherine, and Kingston and St. Andrew. And this has affected the adjudication of matters that are slated for a jury trial, as unless the parties agree to a trial by judge alone, the trial cannot proceed without empaneling an appropriate jury. So we're going to be discussing today some of those challenges that are affecting jury turnout, as well as understanding our overall provisions as it relates to empaneling a jury with our guests. So we'll be joined by Mr. Bert Samuels, attorney at law, and Miss Tamsin Bailey, the Supreme Court Registrar in the Civil Division of Jamaica. Are they with us now?
I'm here, Bert Samuels.
Hi, Mr. Samuels and Miss Bailey, you're here?
Yes, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good
Um,
Good
afternoon.
afternoon to you
Thanks
both.
for having me.
so before I switch back over to Mikel, I just wanted you, Miss Bailey, to give us our listeners a general idea of eligibility, um, the reasons, for example, that you can legally ask to be exempted from jury duty. First off,
Jade, before we get into eligibility, I
okay,
would perhaps start with Mr. Samuels to give a sense of what matters can be heard with jury versus the judge,
okay,
because
sure.
I think that has led to some confusion over time. So if we could start out with Mr. Samuels, because we've heard where persons say, why not just go judge only? So I want to be very clear that there are provisions in law that the judge can try the matters alone. So I'm not sure if you could speak to that distinction, Mr. Samuels, and our common law regarding jury.
Okay, let me see. So the more serious offenses have been trial by jury, and I would list them. There would be for rape, of course, murder, for burglary. Those are the main ones for jury trial. The others are judge alone, and there's been a trend in the last 25 years in Jamaica that our parliament, irrespective of how serious the matters are, gang trials, scamming, they can get upwards of 30 years, have said it must be by judge alone. So we have the older offenses, older and serious offenses, the principles being before the last 25 years that if a man is facing a serious consequences, that is long sentences, he must be tried by his peers. That principle has left our parliament, so we're only left with the older offenses, murder and rape in the main, both capital and non-capital murder for trial by jury. There has been an amendment to the law which allows the prosecution and the defense to agree to judge alone trial. So the defendant by himself, and that's another criticism, that the defendant wants trial by judge alone, not trial by jury, but he must have the agreement of the prosecution, his adversary. And that is wholly untenable in terms of my view of the justice, because there has been a practice where persons have asked for judge alone trials, accused, and the prosecution refused. They want trial by jury. So that's what happens. And effectively what it does is it makes the prosecution begin to engage in judge shopping, because if you say you want to be tried by a judge alone, sometimes the decision by the prosecution to say trial by jury is based on the judge that they see you're going to be tried by.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Samuels. And I think it was I don't remember the name of the act that was amended. I think it's the Criminal Justice Administration Act. You can correct me. That made an amendment that some of the more serious offenses that Mr. Samuels is articulating, certainly the anti-gang legislation matters. So for those who are keeping up to date with the Klansman trial, you recognize that given the real threat or harm to citizens, that was what the legislator had proffered. So that is what is happening. And we've heard from the Chief Justice, Brian Sykes, that he's articulating for judge trials, and it's something that JFJ does not support. So thank you so much for that context, Mr. Samuels. Jade, over to you.
Yes, so we are going to take a quick break. I'll ask Miss Bailey to stay on because we will now go into the meat of the Jury Act and some of those provisions when we return from the break. So I'll ask both our guests to remain and we'll take the break now.
Hi, I'm Ronald Thwaites, and I'm the host of The Public Eye and The Open Mind on The Bridge 99 and Irie Jam in the tri-state area. This program will tell you the truth about life back a yard. Fair, open talk. No gossip, no slander. We want to listen to your concerns. Also want to help you with your problems in JA. We at The Bridge rate you and affirm our oneness as citizens of this blessed land we love. So join us now on Wednesdays on The Bridge, crossing the waters, linking Jamaicans and Jamaican lovers everywhere.
Do you
know someone who has been affected by breast cancer? Were they able to receive the treatment they needed? Every year, hundreds of Jamaican women are being diagnosed. Sadly, not all can afford the treatment they need, but you can help. Jamaica Reach to Recovery and ICWI present the ICWI Pink Run. Put on your tutus and tall socks for this year's color edition. Get ready to run, walk, and have fun. Sunday, October 29, Hope Botanical Gardens. Visit pinkrunjm.com for more information and to register.
Listen up, Jamaica. At Fosrich, everybody's getting a solar water heater. $20,000 deposit. 6 months to pay. What a deal! Fosrich Financing. Call us 876-937-5099.
One love, one heart, one Jamaica. On the Bridge 99 FM.
The people's champion. Our mission is love. Our vision is love. Jamaicans for justice. The people's champion. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Justice, justice for all.
Welcome back to Let's Start Justice. Today we are discussing civic participation and in particular understanding jury obligations and challenges in Jamaica. And we are joined by Attorney at Law Bert Samuels and Supreme Court Registrar Tamsin Bailey. So Miss Bailey, before the break, I asked you if you could just tell us a little bit about what makes you eligible to participate in a jury and what are some of the things that you can legitimately use as reasons that you cannot participate. Miss Bailey?
I'm sorry, I forgot to unmute. Yes, thank you for having me. So the qualifications to serve as a juror, that is prescribed by the legislation. You mentioned that earlier, by the Jury Act. Mm-hmm. Once you are on the official voters list or the TRN list, you're between the ages of 18 years old up to 69 years old. Commonwealth citizen, you're able to read, write, and speak English. You have no pending charges for an indictable offense in the parish court or the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. No previous conviction. Then you are eligible to serve as a juror.
So before you continue, I know that we do have some persons that are exempt. Before we talk about some of the reasons that you made.
Before you
go
on,
we have persons who are exempt.
Oh.
And that is prescribed again by the legislation.
Yes. Hold on a second, Miss Bailey. I think Miss Jackson was trying to make a quick inquiry before you continue.
Sorry, it's the restriction of being on Zoom. I want to be very clear because I do have a challenge with this. You're saying if persons can't speak the King's English, they're not able to sit on the jury?
No, I never said that. But if you speak only Spanish, then certainly you can't. You are not eligible. So I'm not saying
I just want to be clear.
Patois. If you speak Patois, of course.
Okay.
But that is not how the legislation is worded. It says English, and I'm going by what is stated in the legislation.
All right, thank
in terms
you.
of qualifications, yes.
Yes.
So Jamaican dialect, yes, we will take you as well.
Okay, great. So in terms of those exempt persons now, who are we looking at?
All right. So traditionally, the category was quite expansive in terms of persons who are exempt. Mm-hmm. And then the legislation was amended in 2016. And so now pretty much you just have attorneys at law, judges, spouses of judges, masters in chambers, registrars, the mayor, deputy mayor, custodies, justices of the peace, those who preside in petty sessions, attorneys at law in actual practice, members of the JCF and the JDF. Those are the persons who, and members of the Privy Council, the Cabinet, Senate, and House of Representatives, judges of the Court of Appeal also, and their spouses. those are the persons who are exempt from serving as citizens, as jurors, sorry. Traditionally, you would have medical practitioners, pilots, persons who work in municipal corporations, such as the secretaries and so on. Those persons would have been exempt. But then that limited the number of persons, limited the pool of persons that we could issue summonses for to serve. And so the amendment in 2016 was a welcome change for the judiciary, of course, and for justice in the country.
So, I'll ask, since you would have reduced those categories, have you seen an increase in jurors that are actually empaneled? People are showing up and fulfilling their obligations? Is there an increase since that 2016 amendment?
I would say so. I would say that there is an increase, and I'm speaking from the perspective of the home circuit. I know certainly when we started using the TRN list, the turnout was much greater. And then before we started using the TRN list, we were using outdated information in terms of we were not using the updated voters list. And again, we are to get the updated voters list from the electoral office. And so that was not happening for a number of years. And so many persons would have relocated or died or migrated or for whatever reason. So that attributed to the low turnout in former years. But I believe that we have seen an increase with the merger of the voters list and the TRN list. It can be greater if persons are willing to make it. Is a sacrifice if they're willing to make the sacrifice. I hear you mentioned fear earlier, that some persons might not be turning out because of fear. And I would like to dispel that notion. I'm not sure how that narrative started, because I have interacted with quite a number of jurors over the years, and I would say up to 9 going 10 years. And the main reason why they seek an exemption or excusal is due to economic factors. So especially where they are self-employed, the economic hardship is much greater than persons who are employed, and sometimes employers are not willing to release persons who have been summoned to serve. And they also sometimes employers encourage their employee to submit whether a fictitious sick certificate or a letter to give some fake reason as to why they should be exempted, because this has been disclosed to me by persons who have been summoned, and some have been victimized as well. So I would say there's really no fear. I've never heard anyone say persons are fearful.
Before
coming up to sir, let me just finish this point. I've never heard anyone say, okay, the fear is because of this or that or that there. It never goes beyond that statement. Persons are afraid, but they never go beyond that to qualify the fear or the reason or the rationale behind the fear. And so we have to ask ourselves, is there really fear, or is it because of the economic cost?
Okay. I understand that perspective. Before I have a follow-up question on that economic cost point. But I just wanted to get from Mr. Samuels if he has any differing perspectives to yours as it relates to this point of fear and being empaneled on a jury. Mr. Samuels?
Group which doesn't identify itself as such, who do not like jury trials. And what they do is they criticize the system. They find, problems that we have with jurors because they are not devoted to the jury system. I'm glad that it has been said that there is a willingness and a greater turnout of jurors. And if jurors are judges, because they are the ones that say you're guilty or not guilty. They are judges. And if they are not being paid sufficiently, what it means is that we are starving the jury system. And when we starve it, then we criticize it. People are self-employed, as has been said, and they barely can get enough money for transport. and for lunch when they serve as jurors. So because I think that the jury system is a fundamental part of our democracy, it is guarding us against arbitrary government, I think that it should be firstly a constitutional provision for trial by jury for serious cases. I also wanted to add that persons who are exempt are persons with a criminal record. So, you're not supposed to serve as a jury if you have a criminal record of some sort. So that's another exemption.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Samuel. So I think what I'm hearing is that the economic challenges seem to be the major barrier towards persons being able to serve on the jury. Miss Bailey, I wonder if you could shed some light. What, if any, provisions are in our Jury Act to provide financial support to jurors currently?
Well, persons who are selected to sit on a panel, they are paid a stipend. So
Is that an amount that can be disclosed, or is it on a case-by-case
of
basis?
course, $2,000 for each day that you sit.
Okay.
But the drawback with this arrangement is that, okay, so you are summoned, so you're required to show up for the period for which you have been summoned. So if you were summoned for 4 weeks, there's no guarantee that you're going to be selected to sit on a case, because you will only receive the stipend if you have been selected and you've been empaneled and you sit on a case. So that is the drawback. You get nothing.
Okay, so
Right.
just to clarify, so I would
So you might
receive that summons, and it says I am to show up for 4 days. And in the
Right.
4 days, if I am not ever empaneled on a jury, I will receive no stipend for the 4 days that I would have been waiting to find out.
Yes.
I see.
Yes.
I see.
Yes.
Is it true that the money comes after the service, so you have to fund
It is after.
and then collect
Yes.
after?
Yes. You are paid at the end of the tour of the after you've served. Yes.
I
Because
see.
we have to complete a form, get your banking details. So there's a process. Submit it. We have to certify that you in fact sat on a panel and so on. So there are some administrative processes that we have to go through before the payments can be made, just for transparency, accountability, and so on.
Can I add one more
a few
factor?
follow-up. Yes, Mr. Samuels?
Yeah, the public should know that you can have jurors on civil matters. You still can have a trial by jury in a civil case. It's in the CPR for the 2002 CPR makes a provision for the case to be tried with a jury. So, for example, in the past, you'd have seen a lot of libel cases being tried by jurors, and they actually give awards. They determine how much money the person should get if it is found that they were liable. So civil cases can be tried by jurors.
Great. Just a follow-up question. One of the criticism, Miss Bailey, that I recall being made was that sometimes this stipend is paid long after and persons are disgruntled. What is the waiting period presently for the stipend to be issued to those who have served?
All right, I don't have the exact timeline, but I can say for sure, for certain, that there have been improvements. So in the past, maybe say 5 years or so, that process has improved, and the turnaround time is much shorter for the payment, but I can't give you the exact timeline. Once they submit their banking details and everything, the payment is made as quickly as possible.
Okay. We're coming up on a break.
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, just hold the thought. We're coming up on a break, but there are some things I know the Honorable Minister Delroy Chuck has indicated that he's pursuing a cabinet submission around the matter of jury stipend. I want to get back to a comment that Mr. Samuels made earlier about the constitutional right to a jury is something that he's proposing. I would like to hear a little bit more around that, Mr. Samuels, and whether or not that is something that you'll be putting forward before this Constitutional Reform Committee. So when we come back, it's just to dig a little bit deeper on the recommendations as we move forward.
The new KFC nuggets. Delicious, crispy, juicy, original recipe nuggets. With KFC nuggets, you'll never settle for less. The time by KFC nuggets is
1:31.
Come back to Jamaica to the 33rd Annual Maritone Music Family Reunion and Homecoming, October 27 to 30, 2023. Join us at the Four Diamond All-Inclusive Hyatt Rose Hall Resort in Montego Bay. Maritone group rates are available for a limited time. Check out our reunion 3-tour room special and save. Bring your friends, bring your family, bring your dancing shoes. Kingston events start October 21. Visit www.maritonemusic.com or call 954-558-2002. Sponsored by Jamaica Tourist Board.
KFC, news flash, everybody hear this. KFC bringing you the brand new nuggets. Dip it, bite it, enjoy it. Made with real chicken, there's no other like this. This is the game changer. This is what we want. Juicy original recipe flavor. Tastes so good. KFC finger licking good. Brand new nugget.
the new KFC nuggets. Delicious, crispy, juicy, original recipe nuggets made with 100% white meat. With KFC nuggets, you'll never settle for less. KFC, the real nuggets. It's finger-licking good.
Boom bam! Hey yo, you don't know it's the bridge. 99 FM. Keep it locked, dirty.
The deepest champion. Our mission is love. Our vision is love.
Welcome back to Let's Start Justice. I'll hand over immediately to Mikkel to continue her line of inquiry from earlier to Mr. Samuels on his recommendations.
Well, I'll start with Miss Bailey first to get her thought. We've heard from the Justice Minister, and I think we can all agree that when you have a significant number of persons in the informal economy, your helpers, the domestic workers, those who depend on the day-to-day salary, if you don't show up for work, you don't get money. And the fact that you have this stipend, I've heard 2005, you said 2000, Miss Bailey.
No, 2000, not 25. I said 2000.
Okay. So we've heard from the minister that he's proposing that this amount be increased. Do you think, or can I get your thoughts around the amount that jurors are paid and whether or not that would have affected perhaps their ability to participate in the process?
Well, I mean, it would not be the same for everyone, but certainly for self-employed persons and those who are working on a contractual basis, the financial aspect or impact would be a consideration as to whether or not they turn up.
Yes.
And are willing to serve. No one increased to 5,000. Sufficiency of funds it's relative because it depends on how much you will stand to lose if serve. So who is to say that an increase to 5,000? But I'm sure it is a step in the right direction.
Yes.
Because an increase, because before I believe it was $500 and then it was increased to $2,000. Yes. And we saw a greater turnout with that increase. So it is a step in the right direction.
Yes. And Miss Bailey, you appreciate the work that JFJ does. A lot of our matters there in the coroner's court. And a couple of years ago, you could not get a jury at all.
Yes.
One of the criticisms that we had was that you had a small pool of jurors. JFJ at the time called them professional jurors as a criticism because they always were the persons who kept showing up. So, and you're saying that you've seen improvement from your desk, your vantage point. What else would you recommend as an important next step to improve citizen participation and persons being willing and able to serve on a jury?
Well, conversations like this is certainly a good start. Public education campaigns, perhaps town hall meetings, stuff like that. I believe a lot of persons are not aware of the importance of jury duty, and we need to go out into the communities and engage with our citizens to get their participation, because their participation is key to the administration of justice. It is the people who legitimize the court. So we really do need to embark on more engagement with our citizens. And I think that will, because, and I say this, having attended several orientation sessions, orientation sessions, a lot of persons leave and they want to return to serve. Some persons will even say to us, call us, but because the process has to be random, we can't just handpick you. So if we educate the public more, I believe that we will have greater turnout.
Great, thank you. Mr. Samuels, constitutional right to a jury trial?
Yes.
What is your call to Minister Malahoo Fort and the CRC?
All right, so this is my position. We must learn from our history. If we make heroes of Bogle and William Gordon, in fact, we name our parliament or from the William Gordon House, what the enemy of these two national heroes did, Governor Eyre, was to declare martial law, whereby they would not be tried by their peers. And even so, those peers would have to be landed people. The danger of that is that they were tried by, court-martial and found guilty, and off they were hanged. If we are to learn from that history, where if we abolish the jury system, effectively abolish it as Governor Eyre did, we find that you could get a verdict which is in accordance with the wishes of the state, the political state. To guard against that is trial by your peers. So that if we have a government who can choose, or a prime minister who can choose his chief justice, and he can also choose the director of public prosecutions, the DPP would then be at his beck and call, make sure that his political enemies are charged, and then he would be tried by his Chief Justice. That's not something that would be too far-fetched. We do not have laws for good times. We have laws for bad times, and that's what the law does. It guards against arbitrary government. So the fact that we have a government who is adhering to democratic principles, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't have in place a guarantee that there would not be an abuse of power. And that is why I think that an amendment to the Constitution should be that for serious offenses which attract, say, over 20 years imprisonment, persons should be tried by their peers. I think the common sense that the ordinary folk have and the collective wisdom of 12 Jamaicans, they reduce it to 7 or 7 Jamaicans, the collective wisdom of 7 Jamaicans is superior to the wisdom of any single judge. And I adhere to that principle.
Thank you. Jade?
Yes, so I think that we've had a pretty fulsome discussion, and I'm interested to hear that the issue is not so much fear of retaliation, but more a lack of financial support, which I think is something that can be alleviated by these upcoming proposals. So I thank you both for joining us on the show today. If you have any last words, I'll ask Miss Bailey to go first, and then Mr. Samuels. Miss Bailey, your final word on our jury obligations and challenges.
Yes, thank you. Well, I just want to encourage our citizens to turn out once you have been summoned. Please turn out at whichever court that you have been summoned to attend and participate. Your participation is very important to the dispensation of justice in Jamaica. And we're all affected by crime in this country. And so your participation as a citizen is critical. I just want to add that I got the information regarding the turnaround time for payment. That is 1 month. Once everything that you have submitted is correct, no error with your banking details and so on, the turnaround time is 1 month, which is a great improvement from where we're coming from.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you, Miss Bailey.
You're welcome.
Mr.
Thank
Samuels,
you. Thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you for coming. Mr. Samuels, your last word?
Yeah, I think that government by the people, of the people, is demonstrated in the jury trials, jury system. I encourage Jamaicans to act to preserve the system and this trend to do away with jury trials. I'm asking the citizens and your listeners to encourage your political representatives not to go down that road. It's a dangerous road for trial by judge alone for serious offenses. That's my last word.
Oh, Sir Samuels, before you leave, I'm not sure if you were listening into the conversation over by Barbados and the CCJ matter.
No, I wasn't. Help me.
Okay, no, there was a conference in Barbados recently held by the Caribbean Court of Justice. The DPP was there, Fitz Bailey, our Assistant Commissioner of Police. So several matters were being discussed around CCJ, mandatory minimums, and so on. Yeah. So I was wondering if you had listened, I would have asked you a question or two if you had. Okay. But I do hope, Mr. Samuels, that you submit something to the CRC on these matters. I beg of you.
I've written to the Bar Association already, a paper which was published. I'm prepared to express my views at the right time, so we could speak more.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
No mention. Bye-bye.
All right. So we are about to go into our final segment of the show. We are coming up on a break in another 3 minutes or so. But to give our listeners an idea of what we have coming up, we will be talking a bit about that conversation that Mikel just mentioned on the CCJ. We will also, mandatory minimum sentences in particular. We'll also be talking about certain inflammatory statements coming out of our Ministry of National Security. But before we take the break, Mikel, I just wanted to, something that really shed a light for me in the conversation that we just had, is particularly with Miss Bailey, on the fact that while you are waiting, there is no account for that time that you spend, which may not come to fruition to you serving on a jury. And I think that we definitely want to look into it some more to see what is present in other jurisdictions that use jury trials in similar context to ours. But I think that there has to be some accounting for that extra time. I don't think that even with the increase in stipend that the minister is proposing, I would hope that that consideration is made as well for compensation in that case.
I mean, something as simple as a day's worker.
Yes.
Being paid $6,000 per day.
Yes.
Right? Me have a broken the patwa right now. Who could be paying me $2,000 to give up my funds that I will be earning to ensure that the needs of my children, my bills are paid, and so on, to come and get $2,000 that includes both lunch and transportation? It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But even for those who work in the formal economy, you ask about what happens in other jurisdictions, something as simple as how you exercise the right to vote, where your employers must give you that time. Mm-hmm. That happens in other jurisdictions as well. So there are so many things that we can look at to improve the jury system. But, I echo the call of Sir Samuels that sometimes I believe that the Constitution ought to safeguard certain mechanisms that are critical to the functioning of a democratic society. So this is my personal view now. If I do have that opportunity to separate JFJ from my own, I would want to speak for the organization in this particular context, yes. Given we have not had a what you would call a position on that extent, whether it should be extended to the Constitution. But JFJ's position is that jury trials should be maintained. And with that, perhaps my board will agree and go that far that it should be entrenched in the Constitution, certainly.
Yes, well, it's a suggestion that I'm definitely now very fascinated with, and would want to see how best it can become a part of our general recommendations to the Constitutional Reform Committee as well. So I'll see what can be done from my desk on that particular issue.
You're putting in another section.
Yes, we'll see. But we're on the break right now. It's 1:45, so we'll take the break and we'll be back shortly.
If you're in business, get on the bridge. 876-669-5000. If you're in business, get on the bridge. 876-669-5000. If you're in business, Get on the bridge. 876-669-5000. Call now.
Up and Go, the diaspora's #1 morning show, right here on The Bridge 99 FM. Up and Go brings borderless connections in real time and covers the latest news, people's views, and entertainment features like no other. Wake up with us. We've got you covered. 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. We give you more in the morning, right here on The Bridge 99 FM.
Yo, dancehall can't start when the money must shut the content.
Right. Introducing the Bridge 99 FM Dance Hall Chart Show.
I are the one and they are what?
All about our weekly top 10 music countdown, our Bridge Spotlight featuring artists and music producers, and our chat with the Bridge Jocks and music director.
We bring you in on the action. Just send your videos every week for your favorite artists on the chart in our Fan Affairs segment. Do it WhatsApp 876-551-5782.
Jogger!
It's new, it's authentic, it's trend-setting, and only on The Bridge 99 FM Dance Hall Chart Show, hosted by Shell.
You know the vibes this Friday at 1 p.m. at the wickedest thing since dancehall. You know the thing go, we're bringing the vibes to the where, to the what, to the world.
Don't wanna leave, don't wanna go. We stay tuned to Bridge 99 Jamaica. Don't wanna leave, we stay tuned. Bridge 99 Jamaica.
The people's champion. Our mission is love. Our vision is love. Jamaicans for justice.
Welcome back to Let's Start Justice. We've been talking civic participation, jury obligations and challenges. We're now moving into the second half of our show for the other topics discovered, part of our graphic that you'll see on our Instagram. Ms. Jackson, I don't know if you want to lead off the second half?
I can. You know, our Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Security, Dr. Horace Chang, he has made another comment, and for those who follow the news cycle, last year he made a comment that suggested that if the police comes in some confrontation with armed men or women, let's keep it gender neutral for those who are criminals, yes? Can be men or women. According to Dr. Chang, if the police come in some confrontation with these armed individuals, they must defend themselves. And I think any reasonable person agrees with that. But what Dr. Chang said last year was that if any individual who is so injured, then the police should leave them by the wayside because he's not sending any ambulance there. Right? Then, just last week, the good minister saw it fit, yet again, to be advising law enforcement officers. And I agree with Carlo Gulato of Stand Up for Jamaica that this year's comments, it's actually far worse than last year. Because what he's saying is that in defending oneself, the police should ensure that if an individual is shot by them, that person, the only time the body should be moved is when there's a post-mortem. And the comment is inflammatory for different reasons. And let me be very clear. For the avoidance of doubt for our listeners, no use of force policy in any democratic society indicates a shoot to kill policy. None. What policies speak to, including our own in Jamaica, is that use of force should be reasonably exercised and there should be consideration of several factors, including risk to oneself and risk to bystanders. The use of force policy in Jamaica also speaks to self-defense. What the use of force policy doesn't speak to is that in defending oneself, if it is that the police has disarmed and an individual is no longer a threat, you have no legal right to ensure that the only time that body moves is when there's a post-mortem. Because what Dr. Chang is insinuating is extrajudicial killing. And I make no bones about it. I make no apologies about it. And what is challenging for us at JFJ is the deafening silence from the Prime Minister of Jamaica, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness. Because I think it's time that we ask the Prime Minister whether or not this is a de facto policy of his administration. I want to also put some things in context. And to the law enforcement officers who are listening into our program, and we said it on other media channels. Currently, the law makes no provision for you to have access to legal aid by the state. So when you're dragged before the courts, there'll be no provision coming from Dr. Chang. You are going to have to be finding that money on your own. And I want to also remind our listeners that Jamaica is coming from a dark place where we had our Brayton 7 and I mentioned Janice Allen, 13-year-old, who was shot and killed. We're here collectively as a society mourning over the injustice meted out to Mario Dean, mourning over the injustice meted out to Nakia Jackson. But I think we have to question ourselves. How exactly as citizens we approve comments such as Dr. Chang's that the police should shoot to kill, and this badmanism in our police force that we endorse? Where do you draw the line when police officers act unlawfully? Where do you draw the line if it is that you're pulled over by any law enforcement officer and you look a particular way, you live in a particular community, and you're shot and killed? Remember, we have had several instances of crime scenes being tampered with, guns being planted, years after justice eludes us. Indicom can speak to several law enforcement officers where their names, just a few of them, their name ever come up in police-involved abuse and killings. Where do we draw the line as a society? So I want to be very clear to those who are listening in, who call us bleeding hearts and all kind of names in their purview they would assume to be derogatory names. JFJ is very aware of the crime rate in the country. We're sympathetic to it. We're affected by it. But we should never lose our humanity as citizens or as a society, where we call for awesome powers to be exercised by the state. Because one day, that power may very well be exercised on you or a family member. I'm not sure if you have any comments, Jay, to add to it, but those were my initial thoughts on Dr. Chang's comment, unworthy of his office.
I very well said. I don't think there's anything that I could have said that would have articulated the challenges with what Minister Chang said more. And I think that also when we look at all of the other issues that have been affecting our national security and how we've tried to address them in tandem with these kinds of comments, we should be wary of our direction as a country and be focused on accountability in a way that acknowledges the potential direction that we are heading. So I hope that our listeners have taken in your perspective there, because I do think that there is a consistent misunderstanding when we make these statements, to immediately attribute it to a defense of the persons against whom the statements are made, rather than us acknowledging a fulsome narrative. But yes, there was one thing I wanted to shoehorn in before we closed out the show, and that was Minister Chuck's comments in the sitting of the Joint Select Committee on the Criminal Justice and Other Acts last week, where there would have been an indication that the minister is in support of that 20-year mandatory sentence being limited to capital murder offenses.
For children.
For children, yes, let me just clarify, for children. No, I don't know if our listeners recall, but our position has been very clear. We do not think this mandatory sentence should apply to children. And I heard a justification in the Joint Select Committee. I think it was 15-year-olds and up or something of that sort, that we cannot assume that they don't know, that they should know that they're doing something wrong and therefore be able to take that responsibility. And, I'm not even going to get into the merits of that particular argument, because we have spoken about how that knowledge might mean nothing in the context of being in a gang-controlled community, or might mean nothing in the context of the other pressures that you may be experiencing to commit these acts. But outside of that, one of the things that we've always made clear is the need for us to assess children in terms of rehabilitation. Our children are the people that replenish our society to go forward. If we are putting our children in a position where they cannot be assessed to see if they can ever re-enter this society prior to a 20-year completion of sentence, then we are putting ourselves at a disadvantage. And that is not even to go on to the domino effect of our population in our lockups and our prisons that would inevitably rise, our current state of juvenile correctional facilities, which are extremely poor and continue to be poor. So, we have so many considerations that at this point, particularly for our children, our focus should not be on punishment. We need to be figuring out why our children are behaving in this manner and what it is that we can do to address those root causes, rather than going towards this severe punishment. And coming from a ministry that has championed child diversion, alternative dispute resolution, restorative justice, I want to see those principles in line with the recommendations that are coming out of Minister Chuck. So I'm hoping...
And just to clarify, Jade, it's not a case where we're saying that punishment ought not to be based on the circumstances, but it's a case by case.
Absolutely.
Where the judge's discretion ought to be applied based on a social inquiry report and so on. The last thing I want to point out, Jade, to add to your point, furtherance of it, sometimes people are listening in and they're saying, but capital murder, the worst of it all. I want to be very clear that even within the context of capital murder, it's not only the most heinous of crimes, but also who you have killed.
Yes.
So a child may unknowingly kill a juror or act on the direction of a gangster. Therefore, the judge should be able to exercise some discretion. In furtherance of a crime, a child breaks into a house, 15 years old. Unfortunately, some tussle happens and a gun went off and the person in the household is killed. That is capital murder. Yes. I want one to answer whether or not you think that child deserves 20 years minimum to serve the maximum of a life imprisonment. But the last thing here, do not let parliamentarians twist and turn you around. Capital murder on the books right now carry life imprisonment maximum. Yes. The only thing that they're inserting is one, the excessively high mandatory minimum and removal of judicial discretion to meet public outcry. I don't know that could be the basis of a law being changed in a population that is perhaps not aware of these already existing provisions.
Yes. So thank you so much for that, Mikhail. We are at the end of our time. It's Petrina. You won our trivia question for today. The question was, how many persons are empaneled in a jury for murder or treason? And the response was 12 persons, and you are correct. In all other cases, it is 7 or more. So thank you all for joining us, and we will be back next week at 1 p.m. on Tuesday on the Bridge 99. I'm Jade Williams, Policy and Advocacy Specialist at JFJ.
And I'm Michael Jackson, Executive Director. Thank you.
All right.
Jamaicans, for justice, the people's champion. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Out of many we are one in a Jamaica. Make it a better place for the boys and girls. Created equal by the creator. For equal rights and opportunities. No to unlawful detention and police brutalization. Class, gender, race or religion. We not tolerate discrimination.
To join the fight against injustice, contact us at 755-4524 or JamaicансForJustice.org.
The people's champion.
Girl, you're mine. You're one of a kind. I think about you every time. Every time, lady. It's KC. You don't know what this is Kiboy Clark representing for the Bridge 99 FM.